Hello, I'm Nugsy. This is Cheapass-tro. So here I am in my observatory, and all I've done really is open the roof and switch the computers on, other than set up cameras. There is quite a bit more for most to set up for a night's imaging, but that's almost it for me. I'll go through that in the start of the video, but what this is about tonight is capturing your data, actually taking images of deep space objects. Tonight I'm going to be imaging M51, that's the Whirlpool Galaxy, on the night after midsummer with a 99.7% full moon. So I don't expect it to be the best. With a little bit away from the moon, I should get some sort of data, but I plan to add this data to existing data anyway. And then my plan is to go through the stacking and processing options in a second video. So let's get into it. I am using tonight Astrophotography tool for my capture software. I very much recommend it to any DSLR user. It's free to use for as long as you like on a demo version, and the only difference between the demo and the full version is it says somewhere up there, just consider donating or something like that. And you don't get incremental updates. You only get critical updates, like the ones that stop it working after Windows updates and such. But the updates alone have been worth the money, and it was €18.70, whatever that is in pounds or dollars. And that's really not much. That's good. I know Nina is free. I just haven't tried it yet because my Canon 450D that I use, I did read some issues with drivers. Now I'm sure those issues have been resolved, but I've not bothered looking into it because I'm happy with what I have here. So my mount is pretty much ready to go. This is my on-step controller. It's within the PC unit, so we've got the fans sort of drawing any heat away. There is a little fan in the top of the unit pulling any heat out, and that's connected via USB to the PC, and there's also the external power to the motors switched on, so that is ready to go. It's set to auto connect to all this gear. Okay, so the camera is connected. The gear that says disconnect scope, disconnect focuser, so that's connected. I still haven't, by the way, got my focuser to actually run an autofocus routine. I think it's just because it's a cheap focuser, so I just use it in this as an electronic focuser. So first things first, I would need to click on Unpark. This would be similar, whatever software you're using. And my scope is currently still in the park position, which for the observatory is horizontal, so I can close the roof on it. I usually like to send it to the home position before I start on an evening's pointing and imaging. So I'm going to do that now. Simple in APT. When you click park, you just hold control before you click it. Do you want to move the telescope to the home position? Yes. And there it goes. The reason I like to do this, I like to make sure it's all still properly aligned. I've got little marks on the mount itself, just to make sure they're lined up, because otherwise it's going to throw everything off. If I've bumped it or whatever, then it may not. Now to get to this stage, there are so many different ways around it. Not everyone's got the observatory, not everyone's got the pier mounted, the pier mounted mount. So here's a little on how others might set up to get to this stage. And by at this point, I mean at the point where you're ready to issue a Goto or Slew command to your mount to go to your desired target for the night, or to your to whichever bright star you want to use for focusing. So it's a small list of things, and you could write this down if you wanted, and my suggestion for a title for this little list would be Reasons to Get an Observatory. It's because I no longer have to do these things. I have a permanent setup, so I mean, that's not quite true. I would still occasionally have to check polar alignment. I know my star alignment I have confused by syncing when I shouldn't have, and you'll see in a bit that that's slightly out, and why I don't care also. But what you're going to need to do to get ready for this is, first of all, assemble your rig. And by rig, I mean your mount on tripod or pier, whichever, your telescope, your camera, guide scope and camera if you have that, any reducers, chroma correctors, whatever you need. That's all called your rig, your astrophotography gear. Obviously, this is what most people would do, is go out and take this tripod out into the garden, set it all up, get all your cabling connected and free of snags. So cable management is important. You have to get things tied off so they're not going to snag on your mount as the thing slews around. You have to balance the scope. This is critically important. Any of these things, by the way, that I mentioned, if in the future I've made a video on these subjects, there'll be a little link for that up on the top of the screen. So yeah, basically putting your rig together, balancing your rig, and this is important to have it as well balanced as possible. Little tip for Newtonian users is to hang the camera underneath when in the home position, because it stops it being too top heavy. It's easier to balance that way. It may interfere with some like short, fast Newtonians, but you'll know your gear. Then polar aligning. This is an important one. I'm not going to go into depth on this, but your mount has to be as accurately as possible aligned to your celestial pole. I recommend SharpCat Pro as a program for that. It costs £10 a year, whatever that is in dollars or euros, to activate the license for the Pro version, although SharpCat itself is free for the most. The polar alignment routine is, as far as I know, the best there is. So once you're there, you've got your rig set up, balanced, polar aligned, you may need to do a star alignment, where it could be a 1, 3, 5 star, 9 star, whatever you want, but basically teach your scope, like where it is and what it's doing, or teach your mount more specifically. So you point to a target, get it centered in your view, okay, and sync that and slew to another target in a different area of the sky, center it, sync it, another target, center it, sync it, and then any target after 3, maybe 5 stars that you slew to, it's going to be within a whisker of where you want it to be. That is basically it. That's what you need to do before I carry on with what I'm doing now. Okay, so I've sent the telescope to the home position now. It is pointing, I was going to say at Polaris, but near Polaris, at the celestial pole. Now, I want to, before I send it to M51, send it to a bright star any bright star that you can see that night, just to do a bit of focusing, make sure we're as good as can be. And to do so, I'm going to go into the objects, stars, and I've already highlighted Arcturus here. I'll double click on that, fills the coordinates up here, and then go to. So the mount will head that way. It takes a little while, I don't have any super fast slewing on this. And it's almost guaranteed it's not going to be looking at Arcturus when it gets there. For some reason, I don't know. No matter how many times I do star alignment, it's always that little bit off. But I don't care, because I've got plate solving, so I can easily find it. You'll see what plate solving is in a moment, because once we get to the coordinates that it thinks it's looking at, I've added a couple of seconds for settling just to make sure that it has settled. Excuse me. I'm going to capture an image. In the camera tab on APT, here are my settings down the bottom. I got it on ISO 1600 and 15 seconds. I could speed that up just for the sake of video, but I know 15 seconds is good for plate solving. Just a little note on my camera settings. As I've already said, it is the height of summer, and that is limiting me to 30-second exposures. Otherwise the sky just gets too bright. And I'm using ISO 1600. Now I could drop it to ISO 800 and get longer exposures. But I just see no need. I have always stuck with 1600 on my particular camera. I read early on that the 450D is pretty much optimal at 1600, so I've seen no reason to deviate from that as yet. But you can feel free to experiment with ISO 800 and longer exposures if you're set up to do so. So I'm just going to shoot and see what we can see at these coordinates. See if Vega is in the shot or not. Not Vega, Arcturus. Sorry, I often go for Vega. Okay, we have stars. One of them looks quite bright, but I don't know if that's it. So what we're going to do now is not too far out of focus. It's good enough for plate solving. So under the gear tab, I'll go to point craft. This is great, point craft. We have this thing called Goto++, and what it does, it takes an image like this, it plate solves it, so it checks that pattern of stars against its own massive databases of stars. It knows the focal length and pixel size of my camera, so it works out exactly what part of the sky I'm looking at, and then knows exactly how far to move to get Vega bang in the... I keep saying Vega, to get your bright star bang in the centre of the image. My settings are, I think, within 30 or 40 pixels of the centre. But it sometimes fails, so just to give it the best chance, I always do a blind solve first of all. It takes a little longer, but it usually, unless you got like clouds, you're out of focus or whatever, it usually will solve it within about 30 seconds. Quite often quicker than that, but I've added a lot of databases because I've got two cameras and different pixel sizes, different lenses. There's a lot of databases in this to look through. There, so it knows where we are. I'm going to stop guiding. It's automatically started guiding. I don't want that happening while I'm doing this. So now in the Goto++, I first of all need to fill in these coordinates. So I'll click the objects box there and confirm this one, Arcturus in boots. When I click Goto++, asks if I want to sync the scope. I'll not do it at this stage. I'll do it after it's found its target. So it moves a little bit to start with and then takes an image, which again will be 15 seconds. Sorry, I know I'm looking at the screen and not the camera a lot, but here's the 15-second image coming up on screen. Oh, it's exactly the same, so it didn't move. That one solved it in 12 seconds because this time it knows what focal length and pixel size it's looking for. It's not doing a blind solve. On nicer, darker nights, I've had this plate solving within 3 seconds. It just depends on everything, including your exposure time. So yes, it solved that image. Now it's moved and it's taken another 15 seconds, which is coming up in a few seconds. And this time we should see, oh look at that, almost bang in the center. It is, I'm waiting on the results after the plate solves. 117 pixels off center, and I hope you can see there is a center marked with a little orange dot or series of circles there. So that's 117 pixels worth with my camera. I'm looking for within, I think, as I said, 30. Might be within 40, I don't remember. The default is within 50, but I wanted to narrow it down a little without being too fussy, because the cycle could go on and on. So yes, that one's moved it over to the right, and that's in 14 pixels now, so that center mark seems to be off. Anyway, just looking at that star there and the diffraction spikes, I don't think I'm going to even bother with focusing. Usually the diffraction spikes will sort of separate if it's out of focus, and that's looking pretty sharp to me, about as good as I got it before on my last occasion. So I'm just going to say thank you to Pointcraft and close the box after it's completely finished, by the way. Now it started guiding again. Stop. In deep sky, I'm going to find M51. Whirlpool Galaxy. Goto. I could have just gone straight into Goto++ for that. I should have done so, perhaps. And I forgot to sync the scope at this point. So we'll go through it all again. This time I'm not going to do an image and blind solve and all that. I'll just go straight into Goto++ for M51. So again, Pointcraft, Objects, double click Whirlpool Galaxy, that fills in the coordinates there, Goto++. I don't know why, when it's already there, it goes straight into moving, yet it doesn't seem to actually move. I think it might just attempt to free up any backlash or something like that before it takes an image. Here comes the image. Let's see how far away we are. I don't see anything in there, but the computer's database of stars knows better than me. Solved in 12 seconds. And that sounded like it moved quite a way. 48,000 pixels away again. Off target. That's a lot. Let's just zoom into the screen a minute. Now without plate solving, this could be a more time consuming endeavour. but I can already see that's fairly close to centering the object there. I can see the Whirlpool Galaxy. We're 153 pixels off this time, so it'll move it, take another image and see how close it gets. I wish I'd come out earlier tonight, because I should have been imaging probably about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour ago. At this rate I'd be lucky to get an hour's worth in, but as I said, I'm adding it to existing data, so I'm not particularly concerned. Okay, Goto++ is complete. It's within 19 pixels, and guiding has started. So what we need to do now is start taking images of this. I'd like to knock that off. So what we're going to do for this is go into the Cam tab, and I have already made up some plans which are easy enough to make up. They're not advanced plans with focusing routines and things like that. This is literally just imaging plans. So I'm going to take a look, and for light plans we got 10 seconds, 15 seconds and 30-second selections. I know I have done longer in the past, but that was winter. In the summer, 30 is about all I can get away with. So I'm going to go for 30 seconds because that matches my last data. And this is 60 30-second images. That's half an hour's worth. I'm going to click edit just to make sure, and yeah, it says don't dither this plan. I did check that before now. Sorry, I did uncheck that before now. I just wanted to check that it was going to dither. So now I just start, and it's already clicked to take its first image. So these are 30 seconds, and we should then see the Whirlpool coming up a bit better. But we will also see that the sky is fairly bright, being the height of summer with a full moon not that far below it. Well, it's sort of down and left a bit. The only good thing is that that full moon is fairly low. It's only just sort of coming up over the horizon and back down, but it only goes out of sight after astronomical dawn. So this is the sort of image I'm going to be looking at. And you can probably see on my screen there, I need to clean my camera sensor. That spot has been there for so long. But this can all be dealt with lights. With lights? These are lights. Sorry, with flats. Calibration frames. Yeah. So I forget sometimes when I say these things like lights and subs and what have you, that not everyone understands what I'm on about, so I shall explain. For a decent astrophotography image, we need to not only take the normal long exposures, which we call lights, or subs or subframes, but to reduce any noise and dust spots from camera lens and things like that, camera sensor, sorry, and things like that, we also take some calibration frames. They are bias, darks and flats in general. There are also dark flats, but I don't think many people bother with those. Bias frames are easy. They can be done at any time in the house at whatever temperature, no worries. The darks, now they're basically exactly the same as lights, but with the dust cap on the telescope or lens, whichever you're using. So I will have to use 30-second darks with nothing else changed in the whole image train. That is the telescope, focuser, camera, and any sort of filters and chroma correctors and things like that you have in place. You keep everything the same, but just darken it. Actually, I'll talk about all these calibration frames towards the end of this video and go through what we need to do, how to take them. So as it stands, we're on image 7 of 60. There goes another 30 seconds. In my gear tab, it is guiding away. And those figures actually look pretty good to me. That says 0.57 whatever's. Yeah. Total RMS of 0.79. This is pretty good. And I used to have all sorts of trouble when I first started guiding, but actually I think that was down to the mount and bad deck axis adjustments more than anything else. So in half an hour I may be able to get a second half an hour out of it. I'll see, and then we'll go into the calibration frames. But for now, that's it. I mean, unless you're sitting there keeping an eye on things with your gear on a tripod and all, and your laptop, I may as well go inside and have a coffee. I've got 50 more of these frames. That's another 25 minutes to go before this plan finishes. Okay, I've just returned to APT at the end of this imaging session. That's 60 of 60 done. And for some reason, after the plan is all finished, it wants to dither again. So after this, I shall just simply click the plan again. It's just coming up on 2 AM and I reckon I could just about squeeze a half an hour out of it. So again, I'll go to the cam tab and just click start. Back to gear so I can monitor it, or this overall tab, you can monitor it from there. Excuse the hiccups. I prefer gear because it's just something I've always done. That's as simple as that. So we're still getting just about the same images as when we started the session, and it's just simply going to take another 60 of these, and then once done I shall take all those images into the indoor computer to do all the stacking and processing on that. I'm back again. I've been inside, had a cup of coffee, messing about on the internet just while this set of 60 subs completes, and we're on sub 60 of 60. There it is, 30 seconds. It is now 2:34 AM and I know it's starting to get light outside from this moment. I'm not going to bother trying to take any more of the light frames or subs. Again, it's gone into dither after all that for no reason. But the next stage would be to take some dark frames. It's simple enough. It's exactly the same as the light frames, but with the lens cover or the telescope dust cap in place, so there's no light getting to the sensor. Okay, that has finished now. So if I go into the cam settings again, where I found that lights plan, that is the 60 by 30 seconds plan that I was using there. I go into this drop down and I have already made dark frame plans to match. So this is 30 seconds ISO 1600, but it only takes 20 frames. That's all I'm going to need. So you could go with 10 or 15, should be fine. You could use a lot more, but the benefits start getting fewer and fewer as you get higher. I only tend to use 20 max. So if I click on that now, if I was to press start, in fact I'll do that, it says don't forget to cover the telescope, and I have not done so yet, so I shall do that now. Yes, of course. Because I put my hand to the scope, it's lost its guide star, so I'm just going to stop guiding at this point. And close guiding. I don't need guiding from this point. So, we're back to it. Don't forget to cover the telescope. I've just done so, so I click OK, and it's going to start now taking... Actually, I've changed it to 10. I just didn't change the name of that profile. So 10 30 seconds dark frames. And it is good to take these on the night because they're taken at the same temperature that you were using for your light frames. So here's the first dark frame. And we can see hardly anything, but there are tiny, tiny little red and blue pixels around the place. And that's what we're eliminating from the final image. This is just sensor noise, electrical noise, that sort of thing within the camera itself. Okay, I hope you can see me okay in this light. I've tried with the LEDs. This is the moment where we're going to take some flats. So what I've done here with the scope is, after parking it in its usual position, I've just taken the clutches off and manhandled it into an upright position. We'll edit that out. The dust cap has been removed, and what I need now is a clean white t-shirt. I did find a clean white t-shirt, however it's far from ironed, so I also have a bungee. Basically, I'm going to drape this over the top of the scope, over the aperture, and put the bungee around. It's already tied to a good diameter for this. Make sure it's pulled taut. Let's have a little look. That looks good to me. And from this, you could wait until the morning sky has lit up and just take your flats through the t-shirt at the light sky. I'm not going to wait for that. I have a light source. A good light source for this, by the way, is a tracing pad. You can get them from Amazon, eBay, places like that. As long as it's decent enough size to cover your aperture. I haven't got one, but I used a cheap, just LED ceiling light. And I covered that in a clean white t-shirt, which, after doing some work in here recently, I got dirty, so I can't just use that as I normally would. What I would normally do with this is keep this dew shield on, sit this on top, and then take my flats. But I've had to introduce a clean white t-shirt just because of a couple of spots on this now. So I literally just sit it over the top, find my switch, which is somewhere along this cable, and it's one of those lights where you click it on, off, on again for a dimmer light because it's a bit too bright. I hope I'm not off camera here. Now what I need to do is have a look at the histogram in APT. Excuse me. I'll not bother bringing the phone back in for this. You'll see the screenshots, the screen grab, where I try and get the histogram, I try and get the exposure quick enough so the histogram is about a third of the way from the left, and hopefully you'll see that any moment. Oh dear. Well, 13 will have to do then. Okay, I think I asked it to go a bit fast and it clogged the camera up, but I got 13 of those lights there, of those flats, sorry. So that'll do me. I can remove the bungee and t-shirt. Manhandle this back to the park position. And replace my dust cap. Okay, one last thing to do now. That's all done. I've sent everything home. I've disconnected my camera already. Might as well drag that histogram back over here where I normally keep it. I can disconnect the focuser, disconnect the scope. These disconnect when I shut down anyway. But I'm just going to close out APT. Oh, I already closed guiding, didn't I? Never mind. So, this is my key to get in here, and my key fob is a 64 gig USB flash drive. Now I'll pop that in. I'll keep a folder in there called APT, and here on the desktop is my APT images. This is what's been saved tonight. It is the 6th, the 22nd of the 6th. Started on the 21st, so it's that folder there. I'm just going to copy that over to the 64 gig drive. And that's that. So in that folder will be everything I've taken tonight, including like the Arcturus shots for focus. I believe all the shots that weren't lined up on M13 or M51, sorry, but they are in the title of those. It says single, so the ones as part of a plan you can easily tell and get rid of the singles. Just keep the ones in the plan. Because I've made the lights plan and I made the darks plan, they will also be labelled in the file names of those. So it's easy to sort out afterwards, and I'll show you that into folders for darks and into folders for lights. And if anyone knows the answer to this, please tell me. Why, when you transfer it into a flash drive, does it go up to so many megs per second and then down to kilobits and then up to 48.8 it reached there, and it's gone straight back down to 500, back up to 47, back down to nothing, 0, and now it's going to stay there for a bit before it ramps up again, and it just goes in like spikes. Why does that happen? I've not been able to work that out. On the computer in there, it'll sometimes do that, but for the most part it just thinks about it for a moment, ramps up to its maximum and levels it across, and then that's it, it's finished. But on this, on my laptop, no, it's all over the place. And this, by the way, is an Intel i7 4790K, little bit overclocked, with 16 gigs of RAM. And I did do that thing where you prioritize the USB thing, but it still messes me about like this. It's doing my head in. 0 bytes and still it's just 99% and sitting there waiting. It's done. Come on. Why about 5 seconds? And why is that a lie? Thank you. And that's me. I'm going to turn the computer off and head on inside and grab myself another coffee. I'll do the processing tomorrow. And I'll come out and clean this place up tomorrow as well.